Yeah, so the topic was that came up actually the past week. We talked about this, and well, I think it's something that we usually talk about on a weekly basis. Is like what are some of the common mistakes that we see, or some of the issues that we see when, as an agency, we work with a client. So like, what is it that we feel could be done better? And obviously, the way it comes up is not like us just nagging about, or just complaining about, oh, this client that did this, that client did that. It's more of just like, if we want to be doing something more creative, let's say, we often feel like those ideas get pushed down because some of the companies that we work with may be a bit more conservative when it comes to like new marketing ideas. And then I think we also talked about like other clients who literally just fade away because they don't have anyone who's handling marketing from the inside of their business. And that's also a rather common thing that we see, is that a business would like to work with a marketing agency, or a business would like to implement some new marketing ideas, but then they don't really have anyone from the inside to handle it. And then after a while the thing just fades away. So I think that was the basis that we started to talk about.
I think we have a few examples on that. I can kick it off if you like, and then we can move from there.
Yeah.
I think the first example I would give is indeed that not having an internal marketing person available to support the marketing agency. I feel like a lot of founders or marketing people, or even mostly founders, I feel, that are like, hey, we're gonna hire a marketing agency to do the marketing, so we don't need a marketing person in-house in order to do the marketing. So I feel like they're just outsourcing that problem and saying, hey, you know what, now we have this issue, it's a marketing issue, we're just gonna hire a marketing agency that's gonna handle the marketing.
Yeah.
And then you get into the track and you're like, okay, guys, we've created this marketing asset, whatever it is, landing page, website, copy, whatever it is, and then you need some validation, and then I think we have a few examples of those recently, and then it kind of fades away.
Yeah.
Then it goes into this, hey, could you provide feedback? Yeah, next week. And then it goes into the next week, and then it goes into the next week, and that's I think that is the first common mistake I see when working with an agency. Like, you need to have a marketing person available for your marketing agency, at least to give some feedback. Like the marketing person needs to be there full time to understand what's the company, what's the values, what kind of messages do we like, what's the product like. The agency is never gonna know your product as good as you know it. And that's also, I think, going to the recent proposal that we sent, is we were in negotiation with a client, and we said, hey, do you have a marketing person? He's like, no, I'm gonna do this. The guy is amazing. He's a founder. They run a $40 million business per year, and the guy's like, yeah, I'm gonna give the feedback, I'm gonna help you guys out. I'm like, no, that's not going to work out. You run a $40 million business. You're not the one going to be in the calls reviewing copy. If you want, it shouldn't even be your job. First of all, you're the one signing off on this, but you should let it go, because otherwise you can't run your $40 million company. So we ended up talking for a really nice bit, and then we realized it's not the time. And I think that's the best thing. That's also what we look for. If we cannot support right now, it's better to not support. Otherwise, we've been in the shit show of, hey, yeah, we're just gonna start and figure it out. It doesn't work. You need an internal person to help out, and I think we have some good examples of that. But I think that's the first mistake I see.
Yeah, I actually really like the way that you put it when you said that they are basically outsourcing their issue, and that I think is something that you hit spot on, because what I would say is that often I feel like one of the biggest mistakes is that they feel like, okay, this is something that we need to do better, or like, okay, let's say that we need to fix the issue of not really having marketing, but like giving it to an outsourced agency, giving it to an external expert is basically just outsourcing the issue, and you don't really have, because what I feel like it's not even about someone who reviews copy. I would say it's more just, or at least for me, it's just someone who takes ownership, because the thing is that just because you work with an agency, you'll usually won't give full ownership, of marketing to them. So it's not going to be like they can basically do things without you, per se. So you'll still have to, as you said, check everything, say the final yes on things and all of that. So you can either give it to an agency without an internal person, but then you have to give full ownership to the agency so that they can do everything on their own, basically. Or you have to have someone inside of the the business who is able to confirm what the agency does and who's able to actually take ownership of all of these issues and to say, okay, yeah, we can actually do that, we can actually go that way. Because that's what I feel often lacks, is just someone who can actually take ownership. And that what ends up happening is exactly what you said. You go into these rounds of like, hey, can you actually review this? Can you give me feedback on this? And you could say, well, I've done my job and they are just not giving feedback, but at the end of the day you won't be able to present the results, so you still wouldn't be doing your job well, because just because you sort of proposed something and it didn't go through, you're not really bringing the results that they're looking for. So you'll end up being fired, or you'll say, yeah, this is not a way that I can work.
Yeah. Right.
What about you, Apor? What do you think? Some mistakes of that you've seen working with internal companies?
Yeah, I think like what I have seen is when people really like go after agencies is that it goes both ways, but I think it's very important to know the working styles.
Yeah, I think he's gone. You left at the perfect moment, man.
No, I'm here. If you're talking about me, I'm here.
No, it's Apor. He was like, I see, and then boom, it went away.
What, I'm not there? You can't hear me?
Yeah. Now you're back.
Now
Now you're back.
Oh, okay.
So it was like for me, and then it just cut out.
Oh wow, that's funny. Okay, so I'll just start again, I guess. So yeah, the one thing that I have seen is, it's really important for the agency as well as the company to kind of understand the working styles of each other. Like, does the agency likes to work quick and dirty, or does it like to work, perfect and slow? Like, what is the style? Like, what is your pace? Like, what is the agency's pace? Like, are you okay with it? Are you okay with them kind of putting memes out as ads? Like, just trying to kind of like understand those things in the beginning would really help, because what happens after is we kind of just keep fighting. And we've again seen those examples where we want to do something, but we don't get that creative backing or just that creative mind space from the company or the client that we have, because like we didn't agree in the first place, or just that they're not open to it. So I feel like it's so important as an agency and as a company to just figure out like what working style you should have and what is the pace, and also like what are the company's hiring going to be for the next 6 months, just to understand like, okay, what is coming up for us, what can we do, can we like put out ads that don't look as good, can we start campaigns in a day and not worry too much about the creative or the ad copy, just so that we can put something out there and just see the results first and then cope again? Or do we have to wait for like certain approvals and everything for a month, or something like that?
Yeah.
So just figuring those things out, I think, is something that agencies and companies together need to do. Because what happens is we just keep like kind of arguing or fighting or just having conversations over these things over and over again, and then it just creates a hurdle between kind of like meeting your metrics and kind of showing your creativity. So that's one thing that I feel like should be done before.
Yeah.
I think if you look at like the best clients we have, it is where we have that creative mind space where, technically speaking, if we think about something, we just put it live tomorrow and we just report on the results. There is no like control mechanism. Of course, in the beginning you have the alignment on the copy, the visuals, the way of working, like what's the possibilities you have. But like even yesterday we're like, oh, we want to adapt an email towards, because like, we think it's better. Oh, let's just put it live, and it's live, like 15 minutes, like literally. Like we had a call with Tip yesterday.
That's the dream scenario.
The dream scenario. We just jumped on a call. It's like, oh, that's your issue, and it's like, okay, you know what? Let me figure this out. And 5 minutes later, we figured it out. It went live, like it was done. So I think that's the pace that you want, and it's also where you can deliver the results. You just have this full. Not fully ownership, because I don't think an agency can be fully responsible for your growth. It can be partially responsible for your growth, and I think that's where it comes back to ownership. But you can just see that the results are way much better when you have that flexibility and that I would say trust in each other, that the agency has my best will and they understand my business. And I think that's also what we do very well, is trying to understand your business. Even Apur, we had this call this week with a new onboarding client. They were like, we want to know your financial metrics. Where is your finance data? When do you make money? When is it you lose money? Oh, okay, your e-commerce is actually not tracked the right way, because this is not when you make money, it is when the trade is being made. So all of these things I feel is super important to have up front, and I think that also gives us the opportunity to be flexible and to understand the business and make those business decisions for you. But there just needs to be a trust, and I think the trust issue is always an interesting point.
Yeah, like the yes and no list that we added to, like, okay, these are the things that we can, these are the crazy ideas that we can do, and these are the things that we should not do at all. Just agencies don't do that, and we're doing that, which is pretty good, because we have those expectations set in the beginning. But then a lot of agencies and companies are not doing that, and then they, like 3 months later, they're just kind of having conversations over and over again on these things, and it doesn't go the right way. So like that.
Yeah. It's really a matter of also laying out the framework, like really having a sheet that you fill with the client, saying this done like this. If I want this type of asset, I talk to this person, and having really the whole mapping, because every time someone comes in, comes out, and it's every time you need to realign on who does what. So I think having this mapping is super important as well. And for example, to name an issue we also often have is in terms of the delivery. So how you do the briefing, because there is of course all those branding guidelines to start with, but then you also have how you want your asset to be, like what's the format, what's the angle, where you are in the funnel, what's the outcome of all this. And if you don't have a template that explains everything one by one, it will take you months to have the right results. So that's something that's super important as well, to have like a very narrow briefing sheet or whatever support you want to
something
use.
Straightforward. Yeah, I guess that's sort of why I said the ownership in the beginning, because I feel like unless there's like a clear hierarchy or a clear set of rules on how to do this, how to do the... By the way, am I the only one who doesn't see Thibaut and Apurna, or Ricardo, did you lose them as well?
No, they're there. I think you're the one in God mode
cool.
here.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. What I was saying is that back to the idea of ownership, I feel like often one of the key issues is that there isn't one person, or at least, it doesn't even have to be one person, but, like a set of people with clear ideas on what they want to do and how they want to do it. And often it actually comes down to the, either the owners of the business, if it's a smaller one, or leadership of the business that actually make the decisions. And to be honest, I think often they shouldn't be, because on the one hand it sounds good that, well, they're the main decision makers, so they should be able to make these decisions. But at the same time, just as in the beginning, Ricardo, you said, when you're running a business, you really shouldn't be on an operational level deciding on copy or whatever, because what often ends up happening is that decisions like these go through 5, 6, however many people, and you end up waiting for weeks on approval, and you're basically by that point you're missing a lot of opportunities. You're actually stalling, you're not creating what you should be creating, you're not putting out what you should be putting out. So that's what I feel like one of the key issues is, and I think it connects back to both to what Apur said and both to what Thibaut said, just the fact that there isn't like a clear set of like a way of like, okay, this is how we are doing this. We have that one person, or we have that few people making these decisions, but it actually goes back to like all of the leadership, and like everyone has their say. And the other thing is that like the more people having a say in it, the more it will likely be like, oh, actually I think it should be a bit different, I think that should be changed. So like everyone is going to have their opinion. So that's also something that I think is gonna stall the process.
I'm not sure who I told this to this week, but we were looking at quotes from About Opinions, and I love the one about opinions about farts, gonna read it up loud. It's opinions are like farts. Everyone else stinks. They are hard to hold in, and when you let one go, at least one person will leave the room. I thought it was genius.
Yeah. That's pretty
I was
spot on.
like, yeah, the more opinions, the worse.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think chats are good, I would say. Like having conversations with people and about certain things, I think it's good because that gives you just a better, another narrative. So I think, like, imagine Tip creates something and then shares it with Apur, and he will have his mind on it, and it's like, oh, maybe you should try it like this. So I think that's good. But then where you're like with 6 in a room looking at the same thing and you need to decide if it's gonna be this word or that word, my god. I think that's where this I'm not sure which company it was, but they made a tool, I think it was Shopify, by the way, where they made a tool where they put the estimated cost of that meeting, basically, where they put everybody in a cost center, and then they made an average cost of how much, like how long the meeting would be, how much somebody cost per hour, and then basically how expensive that meeting was, so that they're like, should this be a meeting or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I didn't hear about that, but that's super smart.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it worked out, but I just felt that was an interesting, is like average cost or like estimated cost of this meeting. I'm like, okay. But then again, I was wondering like how much people really cared. So it's like, yeah, that's the cost, but like, do I care? Like, I wonder how much, like if it would be like a leader that has the budget, maybe yes, but like everybody below that, I'm not sure they would care. But yeah, I just a random thought.
Because then you need to mix it with like the effectiveness of this meeting. Like if at the end of the meeting you have no outcome, okay, you can say you just lost this money.
You wasted
but if
the
it
money.
was effective, then okay, you need to make another calculation. That's the KPI of your meeting.
I like the fact that I'm not sure who I was speaking to, but the guy was telling me is like, if I'm jumping a meeting, there's no agenda, I just cancel the meeting. And I think we should do this as well, to be honest, even for this podcast. Like I think now we did have like an idea on what to talk about, so I think that's good. But like any meeting where we don't have a clear agenda, unless it's like, you know, the Tuesday meetings where you just talk gibberish and just sync with each other and it just has a coffee moment, I don't think they have to have an agenda. But the ones with the clients and us, basically, if it's regarding a client, I think we should have an agenda, basically. Otherwise, what's the point of the meeting? Then we're just talking.
That's what I do with, I won't say the name, but with one of the clients as well. It's like sometimes I can just tell you, or whatever. Like I can tell you what's the topic, and I don't think it needs a 1 hour meeting. So just send an email and that's it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that's like default, like just to jump in a meeting instead of actually, you know, maybe actually fixing the issue quickly. They're just like, the default is, okay, let's jump in a quick meeting, and it ends up being like a 30-minute call. But going back to common mistakes, I think one which connects to the first one. So the first one that we discussed was basically not having clean ownership of marketing and not having someone who actually, you know, can make the decisions. I think the what connects to that is, what is it that needs to be decided? So to me, it often feels like businesses, and that I call.
I think he wanted to say how many people are in the call.
Okay.
In the meantime, while Zolatan is gone, you know, he was talking about this and I was just researching. I'm just going to share my screen and let's see if this works out. So let me see. I found this, by the way. And the first question is, so the website is, should it be a meeting.com? Love it. And then what Zoltan was saying is like, is there a specific decision that needs to be made? Is actually the first question. So let's say there is a specific question. Does the decision require input from other people? No. Okay. Take action on your own. Good news, you should not schedule a meeting. I love it. So yeah,
There is
that
something
happens.
similar with Google It. When someone asks you a question that you can Google, I think there is a website that takes the question and put it in Google and search for you.
What's the name again? Let me Google that for you, I think. Yes, that's it. So it's this thing that you're talking about. Yeah, I love it. I've sent this quite some time, by the way. So it's this, and then it allows you, let me Google that for you. And then it goes like, should this be a meeting? And then you do a Google search. I think it's like this. And then you can share this, I feel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not it. Wait, no. Am I gone? No.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
Shit. Google that for you. Let's see. And then should this be a meeting? Be a meeting. And then I think you get like a link. Okay, copy URL. Yes. And then let's see if that works. I think it... Oh yeah, it does that.
You can't see it anymore.
Oh, you can't see it anymore.
Yeah.
Ah, fuck. Oh man, now you're telling me this. Ugh, smart asses. Okay. Oh, that's the Valencia
That's
one.
scary.
That's the Valencia. Let me see. So it
Valencia
does this basically. And I think it searches for you. Come on, was this really so hard? And then it actually shows you the thing. Oh, that's genius.
That's pretty cool.
Oh man, that's amazing. Okay. So maybe we should send that from time to time. It's like, should this be a meeting? And then send the link.
It can be offensive at times, but yeah, sometimes need it.
But then again, I think the contra argument for you, Tip, and I'm taking it from both sides, right? Sometimes it's just nice to connect without having an agenda. So I feel that's the difficult balance. So meaning that, yes, it doesn't have to be a meeting, but maybe like the small chat always, you know, it's sometimes nice to just have the small chat as well. So it doesn't always, but it's nice to have.
Especially if you're like us, a remote team, and you want to, like, you need to have a bit of connection and not just talk about KPIs and whatever work stuff. So yeah, definitely important. But when you're already busy and you had a lot of meeting that day and someone's asking for an extra meeting, that's when this thing comes in. Like, okay, I will send you a form, and at the end of the form, tell me if it's needed.
So you're gonna send people forms in order to decide if this should be a meeting or not. Well, maybe we can just send them the website basically. Should this be a meeting? And then see if they decide or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, in my case, it's not really needed as of now. But in the past, last year, when I was in another agency, it was sometimes needed. When you had many more clients, many more things flying around, yes, that was needed.
I think Zoltan came back somehow.
Fuck me.
Oh,
Did it just literally stop for you guys as well? Like, did you see me just gone?
You just faded away.
Yeah.
Fuck me. Honestly, I don't know what that was. That was super weird.
Go to Portugal. They said the internet is good.
I don't even think it was the internet, because like my screen just went black. Just it didn't say any warning, anything. It just went black for a second. But I don't know.
that's
Anyway.
It's too hot. It's too hot in
By
Portugal.
Apple, they say.
Yeah.
True story.
Thanks a lot, Steve Jobs. Did you guys continue?
We continued about meetings, basically. If you should have meetings with clients and what type of meetings, and then, I think that's where we landed. I would say.
We shared that thing also about Google. Like when someone asks you a question that they can Google, there is this website that does the Google search for you. But anyways, that's a bit off topic.
Because the one that I wanted to continue with, because before my Apple laptop decided to just fade away, was that besides the ownership issue, I think one of the issues often is the question of of what it is that we really need to discuss, in the sense of like, I feel like a lot of businesses actually think too much about the wrong things. So like, they would think a lot about a certain visual, or like, a certain word, literally like in an ad, just one word, or like, the wording. And I often feel like they're not really concerned about the right thing. So that's, I think, another mistake when they're working with an agency, is that, one is like, okay, who is it that makes the decision? So like, what is the chain of, decision making? But then the other thing is, what is it that we are actually trying to decide? Because is it really that important whether, that word is this one or another one in the copy? So like, I feel like they're picking battles, picking the wrong battles basically. So like, often we get into these like, reviews or redos or whatever, that I feel like actually focused on the wrong thing, instead of focusing on, okay, let's just put out as much good content as possible, or like, run as many tests with ads as possible, instead of trying to perfect that one ad or trying to perfect that one asset, and feeling like, okay, but that's, like not perfectly aligned with our brand guide. But then, but the other option is that we're not really putting out what we should be putting out, and that's much worse than not aligning, 100% with the brand guide, I feel like.
Yeah. And perfect will never be perfect, because everyone has different goals. If you're talking from someone in the marketing department, who's your client, they will have different goals, so they'll give you a different feedback. And if someone's in a different department and cares about just branding, they'll give you a different feedback. And no way like you can incorporate all these different feedbacks to make one perfect ad. Maybe you can create a language where you can incorporate all of that, whatever everyone gave you the feedback on. But it's going to be such a shitty ad even after being perfect, because it's not going to talk about any one thing. It's going to be talking about 4 different things, and it might be the right language, but it's not going to convey anything. And that's what they're not going to see. They're going to be like, oh wow, we could fit everything in. But then in the end, you're not conveying anything, even with the perfect language. So that's the kind of problem you kind of get into.
Because once again, like when you're really like specific on some words, it also depends where you are in your campaign setup. If, for example, you are doing the first layer of your campaigns and nothing has been tested, you have tested no angle, nothing, like why would you be so specific about one word? Because maybe it won't even work, and it's not gonna be because of this specific word. So I think you can become more specific when you found a winner and you want to try different angles from this winner angle. Then you can start being really specific. Okay, we need to try to change the wording, but not from the very start. Otherwise, as you say, you just lose your time being extra specific for nothing.
Yeah.
I think that's picking the wrong battles, right? It's like we shouldn't even, like, I think sometimes when through my head runs, we shouldn't even be talking about this. Like this shouldn't even be a conversation with 6 people on a call. Basically, this should just be maybe a one-to-one. Is like, okay, you like this word, you like that word, okay. I mean, sometimes for like strategic positionings, yes, one word can make the difference. Like your mission statement, your vision statement, yes, those things, of course, they matter. But sometimes we even write copy and then we put that in the dynamic ads, and then that word is not even being recognized by Facebook. It's not even the language that is being picked up, because the other word is, or the other copy is being picked up, and then you're like, we discussed for like an hour on this word and it's not even being shown. It's like tranquilo moreno, as my mother would say, like hold your horses. That's how a mother we say, is like, calm down, it's okay, let's just test it out and see. Like, I think my mind is always like, what's the worst that can happen, basically. I think that's what a lot of companies should be doing. And I think when we work with the best, with the best CEOs, best CMOs, they're like, what's the worst that can happen if I put this live? Like if I put this live and somebody complains about this because the word is not X but Y, okay, then we just shut it down. Like what's the worst that can happen? Of course, if you're gonna offend a bunch of people, and that's a big damage that could be towards the company, yes. But if it's gonna be like, instead of saying you, it's gonna be them, and we're discussing around that, and then you don't think about what's the worst that can happen, I feel, yeah, what are we discussing about? So I think that's the solution. I feel is like a lot of companies should just think what's the worst that can happen in this case, basically, because indeed what you said, Zolly, no decision and no progress is worse than putting something live with just a word difference.
Yeah, exactly, because what you end up with basically is like everyone is trying to align 100% with their ideas, trying to align with like, okay, let's make a decision that's good for everyone in the business. So like, okay, we have these 6 different decision makers, let's make a decision that everyone can agree on. And what you end up with is either not putting out anything, putting out things too late, or putting out something that no one cares about. Like you can end up with sort of the perfect asset, the perfect ad, which is basically just, I think there was I'm not even sure who said it, but it was something about like, trying to cut down all the sharp edges, but by the end you're gonna end up with like a round ball that no one cares about, because you just cut out all the sharp edges, and it just goes around and around. And so it's a bit like, I'm not sure if you guys you've probably seen or know him, Christopher Lockheed, like the guy who always talks about category creation, and he was the one, I think, who said that a lot of these enterprise copies or enterprise brandings or whatever is like the lounge of a Marriott hotel. It's beige, it's calming, and no one cares about it. So it's like, it looks pretty, it's nice, but you don't actually want to stay there. And it's a bit similar to these copies and stuff that you put out. It's like, instead of actually, like, what we said the last time we talked about this, I remember Ricardo saying that one of the clients, his daughter, was actually a bit fed up with the idea of not having an asset. So she basically just made one herself, which, it's not going to be perfect. But the idea, even in her head, was that this is something that is anxiety inducing, because, like her dad is talking about this at home, like, okay, we don't have the assets. Like, imagine if it goes to that like critical end, that like, people at home are talking about it, and even their kids are like, oh shit, like, dad doesn't have the right assets or whatever. That means that it's way overcomplicated. You shouldn't be talking that much about an asset. Like, it's obviously it's good to have a good one, and it's good to like, think it through, and it's I wouldn't even say it's a major issue if it goes through a few people before it goes live. But the idea of like, as you said, like picking the wrong battles, like, perfecting everything, but then you end up with something that either people don't really like, no one cares about it, or you just crawl to it because it's like, oh yeah, like a shitty common ad. No one's gonna bat an eye on it.
Yeah, and on Ricardo's point about what's the worst it can be, I mean, B2B companies already play it so safe. So even if they try to go outside of their comfort zone, it's still not going to be enough. They really need to step outside, really need to be extreme for something to go really wrong, right? It's not like B2C brands where, it's not like Bud Light that you put a transgender in the ad and something horribly went wrong, like whatever the details of that ad was. But B2B already plays it so safe, right? Like, what can actually go wrong? Nothing. You just, even if you step out of your comfort zone, there's really nothing much that can happen. So
yeah, exactly.
I think it reminds me to the guy who is trying to sell like a logo, basically, and the guy is like, well, people buy logos for 50 euros, but some people buy logos for like 5,000 or $1 million, basically. I think Nike was a different story because I was an intern that was doing it, but like people pay a lot of these logos, and he's like, well, the reasoning is not like the logo itself. That's the thing, that the way you should price a logo is based on the impact it's gonna have on the changes. So that means that if you create a logo for Nike and that's on shoes, that's on their boxes, that's on their buildings, that's all there, and you change the logo and that logo needs to change, there's a huge impact down the line that needs to change. But if it's just creating a logo for a freelancer that just started out, that logo is just going to go on the website and maybe on the proposals, and that's about it. Like, if you want to change that, the guy changes tomorrow and it's like done. So it's the same thing here. It's like, okay, when you make a change, when you propose something, how much impact will it have on the changes, basically? Can you like change it tomorrow? Yes, like Apor said, if you create a copy and it's not online, okay. Even for me, when something comes my way and I think it's 90% good, and I know that it's gonna take another week to just get it straight, let's just pass it on. We have a week's of data, and then I just ask, okay, can you just make sure that it's like 100% until next week? And then we just change the asset. It's not like we're running billboards where you put up a billboard and it's gonna be there for a year. And even with billboards nowadays, you can change them quite fast as well. So I think it's that also, like, you can change things in a digital world. You can, if you want to change something tomorrow, you can. I think that's the beauty about digital, and I think that's what people forget, that there's the ability to make changes super fast if something really doesn't work out, and we can just reverse engineer that very quickly. So I think that's also a factor to play in with.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think maybe lastly, one of the things that we mentioned is that when a business wants to sort of make sure that they have all the right experts for a certain job, and then they bring in, let's say, too many experts, and it ends up in the situation where basically one decision, or like one set of tasks are being handled by different experts from different agencies or different whatever businesses that you work together with. And that, I think, can also be a sort of an issue of like, okay, how are we then deciding on what to do? Because now basically, a different set of ideas are gonna come from the different competing sort of agencies that are doing at least in some percent the same task. That I think was something also that we mentioned, that we talked about.
Who wants to pick this topic? Too many experts.
Who's brave
in one
enough?
house. Who's brave enough to jump in here?
For me, I think I can just say one thing, like, it's only going to get difficult for the company who's hiring too many like of these experts, only because it's going to be difficult for them to handle them. Like, okay, you're going for two things here, you're going for two things there, and then a lot of things are colliding between experts, so you don't know who to go to, right? Like, do you go to like agency A or expert A or expert B? Like, who do you go to? And the experts are also kind of like trying to figure out, okay, is this our work to do, or is this someone else's? Because some of the things will fall into both experts' jurisdiction, and then it's kind of gonna cause a hassle. So it's kind of a messy situation for everyone involved, I would say, like, because like you wouldn't know after a point like who's doing what. So for me, it's that.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
would
Tim.
think that it depends. It depends if the expert way of thinking aligns or not. If you think about it, because if from the start their way of thinking doesn't really correlate, then yeah, that can be difficult and becoming like really diplomatic talks. So I think that I would see it as the main difficulties. And then second is, are those experts on this exact same field, or are they doing different? Do they have different roles as well? Is it complementary or the exact same role? So yeah, I think it's a more complex question than just saying like, oh, they don't put all experts together. So yeah, I think they need to align on their opinion, and they need to align on not having the exact same role but complementary roles.
Take it from a perspective. I had a beautiful example where when you die, or when you're about to die, basically, right? So when you get
That quickly
hit
took
over
a
by-
wrong turn.
Yeah,
That was unexpected.
but let me bring this one up. So if this is a situation for all of you guys. So if you get hit by a bus, basically, you're not dead, right? You just, boom, I don't know, catapulted like 30 meters away. 30 is a lot, so let's say 3, whatever. And you're about to die, and you have to get to the hospital. And so what happens is that a lot of people will just come because a lot of people will check it out, but everybody else will think that something is happening, basically. So if you don't appoint one person to say you need to call the ambulance, everybody else will think that they're calling the ambulance and they don't have to do anything, basically. So that is a little bit related to, like, if you're about to die, you need to at least, or the person that comes in is like, one needs to be responsible for one thing and one thing only, basically, at that particular moment. Otherwise it's not going to happen. Otherwise everybody's going to look at each other and they will think like, well, somebody's going to do it. I mean, I don't know this person. So somebody's going to do it, but it's not me. So,
Yeah.
and that kind of refers to this question is that if one person is not responsible for it, that means nobody's responsible for it. So if you put two experts and responsible for just SEO, for example, there's two people being responsible for SEO, nobody's going to be responsible for SEO because there's no one person you can point to and say, so what happens this month? And it's like, yeah, the other expert like XYZ and this expert did XYZ, and then you just have a bunch of opinions against each other. So I feel like you should always have somebody being able to own a thing, even if it might be SEO. Then you just say, okay, you're responsible for outbound links, you're responsible for anything on page related, and then at least you have the experts in their expertise appointed to one specific thing, because otherwise I feel it doesn't work. You need to be able to be responsible for one thing and one thing only.
Yeah, and I also think it also comes back to the idea of even if there's just not one person who's appointed, or even if, let's say, both of the agencies have good ideas, I think in a lot of cases with marketing as well, but basically whatever you do, there's not necessarily just one good route. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like one absolute good route and then all of the others are bad routes. And so as long as you don't have, someone who can make the decision, whether it's with overall strategy or just a tactical one or just an operational level something, then what can end up happening is that this set of experts say this, and then that set of experts say that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one of them is right and one of them is wrong. If you think about it, like you can basically build a quite viable strategy that is mostly based on organic and inbound. Then you can do the same thing that is mostly based on like outbound and paid ads and whatever. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just one right. But then when you have sort of the same expertise or really similar expertise working on one thing, what can end up happening, as Thibaut said, is that they're not going to be complementary, but they are going to actually put out each other. And you're going to go back to square one, which is you're stalling and you're not really putting out what you should be putting out, and you're not really, processing in the way that you should.
I think to just finalize on that topic is nobody has enough context, because let's say that you jump into a Google Ads account of somebody else basically tomorrow. It's a different agency. You're always going to find something. You're always going to find something which is not okay, because you don't have the context that the person's had before. Stupid thing, like, they're not tracking this. This is like an essential thing, but maybe they've had like discussions for 3 months already to be able to track it, but it's not happening. The briefings were made and it's not happening. So you'll always find something without context. So the same thing with expertise is that you put two experts, or you have an expert running something and then another expert comes in. They're never going to have the context which was happening 6 months ago, where to this point. So I think that's also an important thing to notice, that you both come from a different world. I mean, Tip comes from a performance world, and you put them together with a branding guy. They're just going to have different opinions about how to run ads, but none of them are always wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
sort of to wrap it up, can you guys say, like, each of you, can you say like one advice that you would give? So we talked about basically three main things, which I think all really relate to one thing. But the first one was having like too many decision makers, and maybe not having one person who's actually owns marketing at a business when they work with an agency. What was the second one? Can you guys
Just figuring out your working styles beforehand, so that you don't have to go back and forth like afterwards. Just trying to understand what's the pacing, how many risks can you take, how much creativity you can have. So all of those things.
And then also go on.
Yeah, so when you onboard a new client, from experience, knowing all the question that needs to be tackled before you get started, and making sure that you're briefing towards anyone that creates asset or creates anything, that is super clear, and everything is reviewed together.
Yeah, and then I think we also mentioned the what is the, well, we talked about like the chain of command, so like, you know, who's making the right decisions and whatever, but then also the idea of like what are the battles that you're going to pick. So is it really that important to you know, just get hang up on a word or whatever, or are you focusing on the right thing, which is the end goal? And then I think we finally talked about like having too many experts doing the similar, you know, same thing. So basically just too many experts in one room. So do you guys have like an overall idea on how, you know, businesses can jump over these challenges and how they can go the right route?
I think just think about it from a perspective of what's the worst thing that can happen. I think that's a question that every CEO, CMO needs to think about. Like, in this situation, if I change this word or I let this word be, or whatever the decision is that needs to be made, what's the worst that can happen, I would say, in that case. Because if it's not that bad and you can reverse engineer it tomorrow or in a week, then it's not such a worst thing to decide right now. Just go with the flow, because no decision is also a decision, but it just slows down the whole business, and you don't want to have that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thibaut, Apur, anything to add to that?
Yes, to the very last point, because we are in a growth marketing mindset, so it's really delivering quickly. So if you always have this mindset of being really specific with one word, for example, then you will never have this cadence of testing more and more and more. It will always be just like a slow process. So it's not being into the growth marketing mindset anymore. It's just like, normal marketing. So
good point.
Yeah, and I think like we overestimate the consumers or the prospective customers. We think that they're gonna read everything, but in reality they're just skimming things. So like what we need to make sure is the essence of the ad or your content needs to be out there. Like the essence should be there, but you don't need to perfect every word, because they're really not reading every word. They're just skimming through your creative, they're just skimming through what you wrote. If they like it, and within 5 seconds they're gonna click on it. They're not literally reading like every single word. So there's no point of anyway doing that. So I feel like we can just let things go a little bit in that aspect, just so that we just kind of understand what the personality of the ad is. So
yeah.
Most important is your hook. Just remember that. The hook.
as a closing idea. What I would say is that I feel like almost all of the common mistakes that we talked about today, they all relate back to one thing, is that you definitely have to have someone who owns this in your business, and until you do, you're going to end up with a lot of wrong battles. You're going to end up spending a lot of your own time that you could be spending on, like, you know, business development or whatever that you need to handle business wise. You're going to spend it on, you know, trying to perfect ads, trying to perfect copies, going back and forth, feedback rounds, and then basically the agencies, you know, nagging you with with feedback, and the agencies nagging you with, you know, just reviewing stuff that they have created. So I feel like all of the 3 issues that we mentioned, or 4 issues that we mentioned, like, you know, the chain of command, and then the how much creativity you're letting the business do. Are you picking the right battles? You know, are there too many experts in one room? I think those could all be solved if you just have either one person or like a small department of people, you know, ideally not a lot of people. So it's not like, you know, 6-7 people making the decision. But I think if you have just a small set of people making the decisions, and they have the ownership, and they have, you know, jurisdiction, as Apur put it before, they have the rights to make the decision. They don't have to go back and forth with leadership. Then I think most of these issues get solved, because that way, basically, that one person can decide, okay, do we really want to get hung up on, you know, even if it's something that they don't agree with the agency, it's much easier to deal with those things. So the agency will have an easier job understanding what they need to change, and, you know, as a business, you will have an easier job making those decisions if there's just a small set of people who makes the decisions, and it's not like everyone is trying to chime in and everyone has their own ideas on all of that.
Because remember, guys, opinions are like farts.
Exactly.
That's the closing topic.
That's the closing. Cool. Okay.
All right, I'm stopping the meeting.
Yeah.